He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. This is Hour 3. I'm Mark Levin. The number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Representative Paul Ryan, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, Great One. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. You know, there's a little piece in the Examiner.com, which is a website, by Sahit Mujah, and I should have figured this out. You'll laugh and say, well, of course, Mark. If we put the Buffett rule in place, which theoretically raises $5 billion a year, it would only take 3,000 years to pay off the debt.
Yeah, that's right. It's 0.7% of the president's deficit spending. It pays for 0.7% of all the spending he's proposing. And it basically doubles capital gains taxes for job creators.
Now let me ask you questions about this from a pedestrian point of view. You double the capital gains tax. What happens to money? Where does it flow?
It goes to government. It doesn't go to jobs. It doesn't go to risk-taking. It doesn't go to small businesses. It doesn't go to people who have good ideas that can get funding for them to create businesses. It goes to government.
Can it also go overseas where the capital gains tax might be lower?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you still pay gains, you still pay, if you're a U.S. citizen, you'll still pay gains on foreign.
What if you're a multinational corporation?
Yeah, but this is for individuals, but still, it will chase money out of the American economy, if that's what you're asking. It clearly says this is not the place to do business. We now have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. We now, if this actually happened, would have one of the highest taxes on capital in the world. And the reason in the past, Democrats and Republicans, John Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, said we should tax capital at a lower rate than regular income is because capital is risk income. You have no idea whether you're going to make money off of it. You're taking a risk. You're betting on a small business. If ordinary income, which I'm getting kind of wonky here, but it's money you know you're going to get. When I was a kid and I worked at McDonald's, I worked the Quarter Pounder Grill. I knew I was going to get paid if I worked. That was guaranteed income.
Did you ever see me there, by the way?
Well, did you ever drive I-90 through Janesville, Wisconsin?
I've tried to visit every damn McDonald's in the nation. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been eating filet fishes ever since.
Yes.
So, if capital income is risk income, you're gonna invest in an idea, in a business, in something that you may not get your money back.
So basically, Obama wants to take that money, give it to the Solyndras of the world, where it's blown, where he makes all these decisions.
That's actually his argument. That's not even basically his argument. It's precisely his argument, which is we should take from them and then do all these quote-unquote investments, which is take from the free economy, people investing in businesses, and take it to government, and then have government pick the winners and losers.
So Solyndra is the Obama rule.
Yes. That's
Let me
ask you.
Yeah.
That's the way of putting it.
That's why I'm handing these to you. They're like...
I'm going to borrow that if you don't mind. That's great.
I'm throwing you grapefruits right over the plate here. Now, here's the other thing. I don't like the way he's twisting my hero, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan would be disgusted with what this president is doing. Now, he plays this audio and video, and they talk about it, where Reagan says, look, millionaires and big corporations shouldn't be paying nothing when a bus driver is paying 10% of his income.
Right.
Well, we don't disagree with that.
Nobody does. And what Ronald Reagan was saying was, let's get rid of the loopholes, the tax shelters, so they can lower everybody's tax rates. He was making the case for the exact kind of tax reform that we are proposing today. He brought the top tax rate down to 28% in that speech that he was making the case for. We're saying bring it down to 25%. And here's the issue. The top 1% shelter, on average, a little over $300,000 of their income away from taxation by parking their money in tax shelters. So for every dollar parked in a tax shelter is taxed at zero. What we are saying, just like what Ronald Reagan was saying in those days, was take away the tax shelter so you can lower everybody's tax rates because their income is now subject to taxation. So instead of parking that that dollar in a tax code that's taxed at zero, now it will be taxed at 25%. 25% of that dollar is a lot better than zero of that dollar. And it gives us the revenue we need to lower our tax rates for everybody, for families, for businesses, and it gets America more competitive. The last point I'd say, Mark, is never forget that 4/5, 8 out of 10 of all the businesses in America file their taxes as individual people, not as corporations. They're the ones who pay these taxes, these individual tax rates. Most of our jobs come from these successful small businesses that are taxed as individuals, like Subchapter S corporations and LLCs and partnerships and things like that. And so when President Obama is actually saying, I want to sock it to these rich guys, what he's actually doing is he's hitting it to the small businesses, to the people who have got 50 employees or 25 employees. That's where most of the jobs come from in this country. But
a war on small business.
Political rhetoric.
Okay, well, let me play what he said in part today, and I'd like you to respond to this. Mr. Producer, cut 7, go.
The Buffett rule is something that will get us moving in the right direction, towards fairness, towards economic growth. It'll help us close our deficit, and it's a lot more specific than anything that the other side has proposed so far. And if Republicans in Congress were truly concerned with deficits and debt, then I'm assuming they wouldn't have just proposed to spend an additional $4.6 trillion on lower tax rates, including an average tax cut of at least $150,000 for every millionaire in America.
First, I'd like you to respond to that.
Yeah, so let me break that down. So spend an extra $4.6 trillion. That means the massive tax increase that's coming in law, this $4.6 trillion tax increase that's coming in law in January when all the tax rates go up. If we keep taxes where they are, that's keeping taxes where they are. But under President Obama's theory, it's spending money on tax cuts. It's the presumption that all the money made in America is the government's money, and that the government decides where it should be spent.
All right, let me put a fine point on this, because what you're saying is, come January, if he's president and nothing changes, what's going to happen is there's a massive tax increase. And by the way, for middle-income Americans, too, there is a massive tax increase, and what Obama is saying is, if we don't have that massive tax increase, that we're rewarding millionaires and billionaires and creating debt.
So, but using the word construction that he uses, spend, this money on tax cuts, it's as if this money is the government's first and not the people's first. It's as if these new tax increases are really the government's, they have the first claim on that money and not the person who actually earns the money and pays the taxes. So there's an amazing philosophical divide that's being crossed here, which is if we actually let people keep more of their own money, in his worldview, the government's spending it in the wrong place. Mm-hmm. And so that what he is suggesting is we should spend that money on his investments, meaning we should take it from people, bring it to government, and put it on investments. And taking this money from people and putting it on investments isn't taxing people. It's just spending the money better. It's a weird, bizarre concept that's totally antithetical to the idea of
a free economy. Exactly.
To a free economy. The other point I'd say is this Buffett rule raises a scintilla of revenue, a very, very small amount of revenue. Our budget cut $5.3 trillion in spending from the president's budget. He doesn't mention that we're cutting $5.3 trillion in spending, and he is proposing to raise, with this proposal, about $47 billion over the same time period. So, and with respect to being specifics on taxes, we're saying cut tax rates by broadening the base, by getting rid of loopholes, cut the rates to the top rate of 25% for high-income people and 10% tax bracket for middle and low-income people.
That's the real Reagan rule, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what we're proposing. That's what our budget. We passed this already in the House. Obviously, it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate.
So the president's going to keep this up, isn't he? The president's going to keep arguing that the government's not big enough, the debt's not big enough, the private sector needs to cough up more money. He dresses this up as a war against millionaires and billionaires. But as you're talking about, this is a war against small businesses and against almost everybody come January 1st, correct? Yeah, I got to tell you, even if you let's just say we do 100% tax on every millionaire in America, just 100%. And that's not just a person, that's the businesses. Any business, any small business, any person that makes over $1 million, let's tax them 100%.
that would run the government for 4 months. There just aren't enough of these people or businesses around to take all of their money to fund the spending that he's proposing. Then you have to get the middle class. You've got to tax everybody if you're going to sign up for his spending program. And that's just the kind of the dirty little secret of this campaign of his budget, which is in order to get anywhere close to meeting the kind of spending that he's proposing, everybody's got to pay a whole lot more in taxes. And even with all of that, the math just doesn't add up. You literally cannot chase the spending with all the taxes. You can't tax your way out of this problem. You will have still a debt crisis, not to mention a recession if you have this kind of tax increase, to meet the kind of spending he's proposing.